was posting about Notion on Twitter last week, and I got a few replies from people who said they were interested in seeing how I'm using it. So I figured I would throw together just a really rough little screencast. I'm not an experienced screencast guy, so this is probably going to be pretty rough. But I thought since there was some interest, I would just throw this together and kind of walk you through how I'm using Notion right now. And this is definitely present tense. This is how I'm using it today, but there are things about my setup right now that I'm not 100% happy with, or that maybe I'm not getting a whole lot of value out of. So this is all just kind of where I'm at right now, but I would love to hear your thoughts on anything that's in here. And if you're doing something in a different way, I'd love to hear about that too, because I might want to steal it. So let me just jump in here. So here's kind of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I think the way I want to do this is as I go through stuff here, I'll probably kind of drill down into each of these things sort of depth first. So if you're not all that interested in the specific thing I'm talking about, I'll try to do that like time code thing in the description of this video, so you can jump forward to something that's more interesting to you. So with that, let me kind of dive in here. So the way that I've got my Notion set up is I'm using it for sort of two main things, which I call the home base and the filing cabinet. And the filing cabinet is kind of the sort of traditional notes and information place where it's just like stuff I want to remember, just things I need to keep track of that gets dumped in there. And that's sort of your, very traditional kind of note-taking stuff. I don't think we'll have any surprises there, but I will show you that a little later. The main thing that I'm using Notion for, though, is the what I'm calling the home base. And this is kind of me using Notion to kind of manage my attention and try to keep on top of stuff that I need to keep on top of, but also just make sure that I'm paying attention to the things that I ought to be paying attention to as well. So let me kind of walk you through what I've got here. So this is the first page, excuse me, that I see when I open up Notion is this home base. And it's got a little bit of info on here. I've got kind of the this week section, and this is meant to be kind of a look ahead at the upcoming week. Although, as you can see, today is June 21st, so I haven't cleared this out yet from last week, um, but I will do that later today. So, I could throw reminders of events on here, like, oh, there's that big meeting is happening today. I can kind of throw that on these days to remind myself of what's coming up. And then I've got this attention on section as well, and I'll get into more detail on this, but this is kind of things that I want to be making sure that I'm spending time paying attention to right now. So like I said, I'll get into that in a sec, but really there's kind of a concept here that I've seen a lot of other Notion users use of basically data and views. So there's this kind of distinction between I've got these backing databases that have the data that I'm looking at in them, and then I have views onto that data here in various forms that are useful to me. So if I scroll down here on Homebase, you can see down at the bottom here, I've got this little section of linked pages, and these are all databases. So in a minute, I'll click into a couple of these and we can actually see what the basic data looks like here. But the idea is that I've got this data in the background, and then that's keeping track of a lot of stuff. And on my home base, I want to see that data presented in a particular way for kind of an at a glance view. So as you can see here, this is a view onto the dailies database. And if I scroll down, here's a link to that database. So that's kind of the concept that's in play here on the home base. It's basically just the split between data and views, and I try to use that in a few different places throughout my Notion setup, and it's a very powerful concept. I mean, I think probably most of the people who are going to watch this video are programmers or somehow in the software industry, and so you're no stranger to this idea. But for people who don't work with databases every day, this is a very powerful idea of a separation between the presentation of the data and the actual data itself. And if you can practice this idea and make use of it, you'll find that it's incredibly flexible and incredibly useful. So that's kind of the idea behind this main thing here. So let me drill into each of these sections that I've got on the home base here. So I've got this week ahead view, or the this week view, and each of those days in the week has a daily page on it. So if I take a look at this actual database, you can see it's just a table of pages, each of which has a date, and you can see I've been doing this for a few weeks now. I had something similar to this earlier, but it wasn't quite in this exact database form. So that's the database here, but I almost never look at this page. I almost exclusively look at these dailies by looking at the individual pages that are created from those rows in the database. So let's say that I'm setting up for, well, let's just do today. What I've got here is a template on this database. Well, actually, real quick, first, before I dive into that, let me show you what this view is. So with Notion databases, you can link a database elsewhere and then make a view on it. And this is just the board view. So it's sort of like a Trello kind of view or Kanban board. And that's what this view is. And then I've slapped a filter on it as well. And what I do is just change these dates week to week. So this is just setting the date on each of those rows, making sure it's on or after the start of the week and on or before the end of the week. And that just scopes it down to the week ahead. And like I said, I haven't updated this yet for this week, but I will do that shortly. So when I am getting ready for the start of the day, I'll use this template that I've made for that day, and I just click on the little arrow here and boop, hit that. And I just kind of call it whatever I want, but my convention is day of Sunday, June 21st, 2020. It's a little wordy, but whatever. And I usually like to kind of open it as a page as well, just to get that full screen view. And I've got a few properties on this database. So I'll just kind of walk you through what these are here. I've got the easiest one is the date, and I can just click on that and say this is for Sunday. I've got computed day as well, just because I kind of like to just have that Sunday there. And all this is a prop or a property. And it's a formula, sorry, that's what they call these. It's a real simple Notion formula. I can just grab out the date prop, that's just the second field here. And then I can give it this is like a Moment.js style date format. And I'm just plucking out the day of the week there. And I just find that useful for at a glance views. And then I've got this rating thing where I can say today was a great day, a fine day, or a bad day. I don't know if I'm going to keep that. It hasn't been super duper useful to me so far, but it's there. And then this day property, this is a little gross, and I wish that I could come up with a way to make this happen automatically, but this is here because this is the field that my week ahead view looks at to make sure that it goes into the right column here on this Kanban view. So if I could figure out a way to make that look at that computed day property, that would be great. But so far, I haven't figured out how to do that. So actually, let's go ahead and update this filter since I made that new one. So here's the start of the week. Make sure it's after June 21st, and we'll just go to Saturday. And there we go. You can see there's nothing else here yet. If I had, like some big events or like somebody's birthday I didn't want to forget or whatever, I would just throw it on that particular day. And then these dailies would accumulate, day by day as I made the plan for that day. So I can come back here into my template, and each morning I've got kind of this little checklist, and this is just a Notion toggle, which is a nice little one of the little widgets or one of the blocks that they make available. You can kind of just have this so that it's out of the way, but then when you want to actually do it, you go through here. And I've just got this little checklist of things so that I don't forget what I wanted to do to get set up for the day. And as you can see, I've got a few different things here, including projects and areas of focus. So one of the things that I do here is, and I'll talk more about projects and areas of focus in a couple minutes, but the idea here is I want to call out the things that are sort of, the bigger things that I want to pay attention to today. So, if it's a work day, let's just pretend it's a work day because that's kind of the easiest one. I'm going to put a link here to my current project at work, which I have renamed for privacy purposes for this video. But I would put this link here so that I can easily click this when I'm looking at my daily view. I just sort of easily see like, oh, I need to spend some time paying attention to Acme Widgeco today. And I would just click on this and it would take me over to that project page where I've, got a checklist for that project or notes that I need to keep in mind or, various things of that nature. And a lot of times what I'll do also is throw on like a small like goal for the day for that particular project. Like I need to get a couple code reviews done today, just like a little reminder to myself so that I see kind of what my overall goal for that thing is today. Then you can see I've got a couple habits here that I'm keeping track of. And then here's another example of this data and views thing. So I've got another database that I call tasks and small projects. And let me just, hopefully there's nothing too embarrassing on here, but I guess if there is, then whatever, we're all friends here. Let me click over here, and this is just a list of things that are not necessarily big enough to deserve like their own whole big page in Notion or whole big section, but there's stuff that I have to get done. So what I like to do here is throw small things in here, or if there's like, you see some of these have checklists on them, or I'm sorry, pages. So if it's like, there's 3 or 4 steps to do this thing, then I'll just make a page with a checklist in it. But let's say that I want to do this thing today. I'll set the date, the due on date, make that today, and then I'll go back over here. And part of my morning setup is, since this page comes from a template, this is another thing that I would love to figure out how to do in Notion. I don't think there's a way to automatically have it change this filter. I think I have to do this manually. But I can do that and say, let's make this setup for today. And so this is my like small tasks to-do list for today, is I want to send Granny a card. And I will do that later. And when I'm done with these, I just check these off. And since this is a view onto that database, if I come back over here, then we see that that is gone from this list. And the reason it's gone from this list is because I have another filter over here that hides the things that are done. And so that's just a nice way of saying like, today, this is the stuff that I want to pay attention to, but also the changes that I make to that backing data propagate out to a more central place. It's not just locked here in my daily log. And that's kind of one of the, I've experimented with a lot of different productivity systems like bullet journal and things like that. And that was always one of the problems that I had with that sort of thing is a lot of the information winds up sort of stuck um, in the daily log thing. And I kind of want it to propagate back out to the more central databases. And so that's what happens when I do this sort of thing. And, I've got also just if there's a space here for notes, things that occur to me during the day, things I don't want to forget, that sort of thing. And then there's another checklist down here just at the very end of the day. So that is probably way too much talking about this kind of dailies thing. But that is where I spend most of my time during the day is I'll be looking at either this home base page or I'll be looking at this daily page. And typically, during a work day or whatever, I'll just be kind of going back and forth between this and then, the projects that are listed up here, that sort of thing, just to make sure that I don't forget what I'm supposed to be paying attention to. And a lot of times what I'll do also is once I've made this page for the day, I'll just click favorite, and then it's just real easy to access no matter where I am in Notion. And you can see I haven't finished clearing out the one from Friday yet, but I'll do that later today also. Okay, so that is dailies and the kind of week ahead view that I've got. Let's now jump over here to this attention on section. So for me, this is kind of probably the most important part of my Notion setup. I have a real tendency to start a project or start even if it's like a book or a TV series or something, and pay attention to it for a few days and then just sort of forget about it. Um, and then like a month later, I remember, oh, yeah, I started reading that book, and just like never finished it. And so this is a way of kind of reminding myself what I've said I'm paying attention to right now. And so I include three things in that. I've got projects, which are actual concrete projects that involve real steps in the real world, things that I'm really doing. I've got areas of focus, which are a little bit more nebulous, kinds of higher level sorts of things, like Eighth Light is the name of the company I work for. So um, doing a good job at Eighth Light is an area of focus of mine, but it's too big to really be a specific project. And then I've got another one over here, current media, just because I like to, again, like I said, not forget that I'm reading a book halfway through. So this is the games and TV shows and books and stuff that I'm currently working my way through. And as you can see, these are also views onto databases. So I can show you those databases now. I've got this thing called the timeline. And if I click onto that, this timeline is meant to be kind of a historical log of what I have been paying attention to over time. And so as you can see, um, a lot of the things in here actually have date ranges, and this is one of the really nice things about dates in Notion is you can give it an end date. So there's this little toggle here. It's not just like a single point in time. You can actually say, here's the range of dates that this particular thing encompassed. And I've got a few other properties on these database rows. One of them is now. So this checkbox is similar to the one for the to-do list database. This is the thing that those home base filters use. So they'll only appear if now is checked. I've also got a little calculation here, or a little formula, sorry, and this is just showing me, again, how long this thing has been going on, if it's still present, or how long it lasted if it's done. And that's just a nice reminder to me because I can, kind of at a glance, let me just hop back over here real quick, say like, oh, I've been playing this game for 82 days. And that's just kind of a useful piece of information for me. I'm not, trying to race anybody to the finish line on these things, but if something gets up into a number that's higher than I'm comfortable with, that's just a useful sort of thing of like, well, maybe am I just not enjoying it, or is it taking over my life, or it's just a piece of information that I can use to make decisions with. There's a couple other things on this database. So this days here, this is just a formatted version that can present nice. But here's the formula. It's a little gross, but I'll leave that on the screen for a sec if you're interested in having the same thing. Basically, I'm just calculating the duration of uh, the dates using the start and end dates. Um, and there's one other interesting thing here, and that is that each of these things get tagged. So project and area of focus, obviously those are those first two columns on my home base page. But then I also like to keep track of important events and decisions as well. So if something important happens kind of in the world or in my personal life, or if I've been if I've made some sort of decision that I think is going to be impactful in some way in my life, then I'll try to remember to make a note of that on this same timeline, and maybe jot down a couple of words on that page as well, just sort of explaining my thought process. And then that's nice to be able to look back, like, a year later, kind of look back and say like, oh, it looks like a year ago, this is a decision I made about, my career or something. And this is what I was thinking about it at the time. And I can, kind of say, how did that pan out? Was that a good decision? What have been the effects of it? So, like, here's a nice example. We bought a coffee maker on about a month ago, and I would say that's gone really well so far. Um, and as you can see, the things that are still now, and this is probably a refinement I could make to that formula, they don't show up here, unfortunately, as spans yet. But as soon as I uncheck now and add an end date to this, then it will fill up the whole space that it needs to take. Um, okay. Whew. We're covering a lot of stuff. Let's see where we're at here. Yeah, that's the timeline, projects, areas of focus, events, decisions. And then the media calendar is basically the same thing as the timeline, but I have it split out here to basically just reduce clutter. But it's essentially the exact same thing. And I can look back. It's just kind of something that I enjoy doing, to look back, like, what was I into last month? Oh, it looks like I was watching Westworld and playing Exapunks. That was a fun time. Maybe I should maybe I should watch another season or something. And so that's kind of it. And just to show you again, these filters here are just it's looking at the timeline database, and it's saying, is a thing clicked now, and what type of thing is it? It's a project. And the type of view here is this gallery, which is just kind of fun because it pulls the background image for the project, and just, I don't know, it's more visually interesting, I think, than just like a list of text. Um, so I think we're getting through it. Thanks for sticking with me so far. Um, Really, that's kind of everything in home base. You may have noticed earlier when I scrolled down here, I've got a few things that I don't really know what to do with yet, like personal finances is a big one that I've been thinking about. I don't know exactly what to do with that yet, but it's going to fit into this somehow. Um, but I don't know how exactly yet. But it is something that I would like to be paying attention to on a regular basis. So it's kind of, down in this holding area while I figure out what to do with it. So really, there's only one other thing to talk about here, and that is the filing cabinet. And that is really your more traditional sort of like notes go in here. So I've got this column here just called facts. And that's just like, the sort of thing that you might jot down on a sticky note and stick on your fridge or something like that, like Wi-Fi passwords at various places and uh, people's birthdays and stuff that I don't want to forget. And then I've got some more in-depth notes over here about, like topics that I've studied or books that I've read, that sort of thing. So if I go into, for example, Tech Notes here has some more stuff like right now I'm reading a book about C++. So here's the notes that I've got for it so far. And this is very much, I think, probably what you would expect based on just the real basic Notion features. There's nothing really surprising in here. It's just a lot of headings and subheadings and bullet point lists and code blocks and that sort of thing. There's nothing really fancy going on in here. Um, but yeah, that stuff just sort of all gets consolidated here in the filing cabinet. And just like my real filing cabinet, this is not super duper organized. I really rely on the search feature to kind of find stuff. If I know something's in there and I want to retrieve it, a lot of times I won't even try to navigate there. I'll just sort of search for it. Um, and I think that's about it. Um, so yeah, thanks for watching. I hope that was useful to you. Like I said, I'd be really interested in hearing how you're using Notion, or what was helpful about this, or what was confusing. If there's something that you want me to explain a little more carefully. Um, and yeah, like I said, again, it's a work in progress. Some of this stuff is probably going to look different in a couple of weeks. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for watching.